All right, Gaurav, officially welcome to the Wealth Juice podcast. I was just chatting with you pre-recording. I'm really excited to have this conversation because you and I met just like on Zoom a few weeks ago. We were introduced to by a good friend of ours, and that's kind of how this game works. But your story is unbelievable. Like every when you were telling me your story a few weeks ago, I every new thing that you told me, I was just impressed by, and I was amazed by what you've overcome and the things that you've done, and you're a real estate investor. But it's funny, we're having this conversation. I'm in Philadelphia and you're in India. So I have not, I don't think I've interviewed anybody. I've interviewed one person or two people internationally in Europe, but I'm just really excited to have this conversation and I appreciate you taking the time today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate this for having me over as well. So I can kind of like share some kind of motivation or tell my story to see or like help someone who is maybe in some kind of shoe related to that, they feel stuck, and if I can give some inspiration to them.
Yeah, you're going to help a lot of people today. So, what I want to do actually is just take me back because you have this unique story of trying to get your citizenship in the United States and overcoming all these obstacles to do so. And you kind of had this back against the wall mentality of things that you had to overcome in order to stay in the US. Now, of course, you're back in India, but you have a real estate portfolio. You teach people how to do this that came from a similar situation as you. So, just take me back to how this all started and how you overcame some of these things that you did to when you were in the States?
Sure, absolutely. So my story starts in India. So I was born and brought up in a city called Lucknow, and I grew up with very humble beginnings, where three generations were living under like a very tiny, like one room, and all of us had very less money at that time, and we were almost at the brink of poverty. My dad probably earned somewhere around like $150 a month for six people. So it was definitely, we had less resources. And that's where I come from. So I thought, okay, if I have to remove poverty, getting educated, learning how to speak English, doing all of that is going to provide or like help me grow. So started educating myself at the age of 12, 13, because we had less. I started like teaching more, like going out and teaching other students just to like get some money. And then essentially then bring back that money to buy kitchen utensils for my parents so that, things become easier in the household. So that's where kind of like how like I was born and brought up. So I did not have much. Uh, but then I always had this drive of education, right? Just studying. So after I completed my high school, I kind of like applied for colleges in the US to kind of get a scholarship, or kind of like getting into a university, but also paying. The only problem that my dad did not have any money. So the only other option is that so in India, how it works is that whenever you get an education loan, you have to get a collateral like against it. That means my family like had to collateralize their home which we were living in. Based on that, we got an education loan, and then my dad retired at that time and just paid everything, whatever he had built up as his life saving. He gave all of that for the rest of the money which was required, and I also got some scholarship. So 2014, finally, I land in the US. I came into complete my education for electrical engineering. So I came to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, coldest place ever. I feel.
Say the most beautiful part of the United States, Milwaukee.
Yes,
And I'm
and
not
by
shitting on
time,
Milwaukee because I've actually never been there, so I'm sure it has its
oh,
good parts
yes.
to it.
Yes, it's so cold. Oh my God. I'd never seen snow before in my life. So that was the first time, and like going into the negatives, and then it was a nice experience. Let's say that. But I land in the US, and by this time, my family does not have any money. So I land in the US with $50 because I thought $50 would go a long way because that was a lot of money in India. So I land in the US with two suitcases with luggage, like all my clothes and everything, and then $50 in my bank account. And the first day when I went out, and I'm like, okay, let's go to eat. And then I remember I went to Chipotle. And my first meal, which I think I ordered a bowl for $7. And that's when it just created this. I'm like, oh my God, I can only survive another 7 days, like being here. Otherwise, I have to figure something out. So by that time, majority of the jobs are taken up because I landed in close to September, October. So the only thing which was remaining was a janitorial thing. So cleaning toilets or cleaning the buildings, whichever I was living in. That was my first experience coming to the US, but I saw it as an opportunity of like, hey, because hey, I've just landed in a new country. I'm making friends and I'm roaming around in the same dorm room where a lot of like my batchmates are coming in and like seeing me do that. So obviously there was this ego, I would say, which kind of like takes in as like, oh my God, I'm like, I cannot do this. But I saw it as an opportunity because I know I now have to provide for my family back in India as well. Because they've retired, they don't have any other money. So now I started doing like that's my first job. So within the first 7 days, I kind of started doing part-time jobs in the college campus, and that's where kind of like my story starts in the US.
Yeah. So I to fast forward people too, you now have 55 rental properties in the United States that you manage from afar.
Yes.
I don't even know if you could get further away than the States from India. So you're managing them from afar. So that is like the in between of what happened. You came here with $50. And by the way, that Chipotle bowl is now double. It's $14 for the same bowl that you bought in 2014.
Yeah.
That's just how it works. So now you have 55 rental properties and you're helping people navigate through this process of like being able to invest as somebody who's wasn't born as a citizen. Okay, great. But the trials and tribulations, forget having $50. The stuff that you had to go through next to me was like, when I heard your story, I was like, the people got to hear this. The people that are listening to our show have to hear this. So tell me about your next couple years. I know you ended up working for Tesla, but then you got laid off. Just tell me about what happened, because I think it's a lot, some good context.
Sure. So I'll tell you the process of what it takes from me becoming a student to all the way, and I've gone through the whole process all the way to becoming like a green card holder and then becoming a US citizen. And I'll tell you like my story along that. So I graduated, like my course finished, I got my degree, I graduated with honors. But now once I graduate, I only have 60 days to find a job. If I do not find a job, I have to go back and return to my country. And that was going to be such a no-no for me because, hey, I cannot go back to India and earn the same amount of money, like taking up jobs or doing those things and repaying my loan. So I started looking for a job. Luckily, I found a job. A lot of my friends did not, so they had to return back to India or to whatever country they came from. So then I have something which is called an OPT, like which is called an optional practice training. And once I graduate, if I acquire a job within the next 60 days, that is valid for a year. So if I am a non-STEM major, which essentially means that it's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, if I do not have a degree related to that, I get a 1-year OPT, like a training period where I can keep working for that company. But if I'm from a STEM major, I can work for another additional 2 years. So once I am on OPT, now my employer has to file something which is called an H-1B lottery for them to keep me for a longer term, and that's valid for another 6 years. That is called the H-1B visa. And to acquire a visa at H-1B, it's a completely random lottery system. So imagine like you have to put your employer obviously has to sponsor you and then pay the government to bring you on and then put your name into the lottery system. And then if you get into the lottery, you can then be here for another 6 years, which is the H-1B visa.
So if you've ever tried getting a mortgage, which I'm sure many of you have, you know how daunting and discouraging it can be of a process. The slow process, paperwork, being told no without any real explanation. One time we were even told that taking out a home equity line of credit on an investment property wasn't even possible. So that all changed when we were introduced to Neo home loans. What makes Neo different is literally how they approach lending. They're not just checking the boxes, they're legit problem solvers. They look at your entire financial picture and explore multiple angles, literally until they find a strategy that works. They helped us reposition our portfolio, pull out lines of credits to scale, and structure everything for long term growth. And on top of that, their rates were some of the most competitive that we've seen. They just literally did whatever it takes to find a solution. For us, Neo has become our liability advisor. The same way you have a financial advisor on the asset side for the liabilities. If you're serious about building wealth through real estate, it's worth sitting down with them and getting your lending strategy dialed in. If you want to book a call with them, click the link in our show notes. Their team is unreal, but don't just take it from us. Find out for yourself. So just to stop you real quick, so basically what you're telling me is, and if I'm understanding this correctly, there's not as much of an incentive for a company to keep somebody on who's international because they have to go pay the government whatever
Yes.
that they have to pay the government, and they would rather find an American citizen because it's less of a hassle, less paperwork. They have to pay less. So not only is it a lottery, but you're even against more odds of like the common company, even if it's a big company, is like, well, it makes a lot more sense for me to hire an American. So that was another thing that you had stacked up against you, correct?
Correct. Yes. So that's what happened when like I got my first job. And then once I landed my first job, I got into the lottery system of like applying for like an H-1B visa. Luckily, again, majority of my friends already went out back home in the OPT phase, and then another big portion because they could not like get into the lottery. A lot of like the other people went back home, and it's wild that close to 700,000 people apply every year, and there are only 85,000 people who get it. But you'll be put into a 65,000 pool if you have an undergraduate, and then you'll have another chance if you are. So the whole 85 is also an unlock kind of a thing if you have an additional degree or a higher education. So I got into the lottery, but I think 9 months later, I get laid off. And this is in 2018. By this time, what has happened at my back home is that my mom, like my grandma, passed away, and then my mom has a paralysis attack. So now I have this extra burden of money going back home to like my parents, because now I need like a nurse, I need to have medication, I need to have physiotherapist, a lot of those extra things coming in, and I lose my job over here in the US. So 9 months later, and this happened on 7th of December 2018. And that's the most wild period because nobody's looking at your resume. Everyone's going for Christmas holidays, or the holiday period has almost begun. But my 60-day clock is still running because I still have to find another job in the next 60 days. Otherwise, I get kicked out of the country. So I started applying for started applying for jobs. My full-time job was from 7th of December to the 19th of December to apply for jobs. So I almost applied for 10,000 jobs, and I got 2 calls back. The biggest reason is the first stage which you talked about is that companies will often reject. Like that's why sometimes you'll see on the application, hey, do you now require a sponsorship now or in the future? And generally, a lot of these companies have that if you say yes, you're automatically rejected. So I got 2 calls back. One was from GE and one was from Tesla. Cracked the interview, luckily. But then also on H-1B, they do something which is called a labor certificate application. That essentially tells the government that, hey, I am not replacing a US citizen. I am being paid prevailing wages. So for example, they will do a study, and this is completely separate. So that application, when I get my H-1B, it goes to the government, and then the government does a prevailing wages. They do LCA certification just to see that, hey, I'm not replacing someone else. But on top of that, they also have to pay the additional fee for the H-1B filing. So luckily I get into that. Finally, I'm like, okay, now I have a job in 2019. Now I'm working for Tesla, but I'm like, I can never go back to that panic or anxiety ever again, where I have to like kind of build something on the side so that if something again like this happens, I am not kind of like I can clear all of those loans and like I can feel stable. That's when I started like educating myself about finances, about like budgeting, about just reading like different kind of like money books, and then started pivoting towards real estate because I started seeing a lot of interviews from people coming on the podcast and talking about real estate. But obviously I had that limiting belief that who am I to kind of like even buy, like coming from there, you would never imagine to kind of like buying a house. And I'm like, who am I to do that? But I still kept educating myself. And then one day I found an opportunity where a podcast host was talking about, hey, I'm going to buy a Tesla with my cash flow, but I don't have a clue about like how to do it or like what are Teslas. I reached out to him and I'm like, hey, I'll help you. I work at Tesla. Like, and I'm an engineer. I can give you the tour. I can potentially give you discounts, stuff like that. So I helped him to kind of purchase his Tesla. And then he, in return, helped me get into my first house hack in Reno, Nevada. That's where I moved for my job. And then I finally bought my first home on 15th of June. And that was mid-year, mid-COVID. Bought my first home and then started house hacking. So that's my first deal, which I got. And that was an amazing experience where I'm like, hey, I'm saving on rent and I'm getting paid to live in my own home. So that's where kind of like my journey starts, um, buying or getting into the rental like real estate space.
Yeah. The power of social media is unbelievable. And we don't have to share the person's name, but this person that you reach out to has been on our podcast, and he's widely known in the space. So I think it's very cool that you reached out. I have this value exchange. You have limiting belief. I can't get into real estate. Okay, fine. But if I could help this person do this thing that they want to do, maybe in return they would teach me how to do this. And that's exactly what happened. And then once you learn the game, a couple deals, it becomes a lot easier to start buying. But that being said, you now have 55 rental properties, and that has happened in the last 6 years. So I want to know the strategy that you used to go from 1 to 55, and like how were you able to accumulate these properties in such a short time frame?
Sure. So the major reason why I started doing this was obviously trying to build my cash flow to kind of sustain or replace my income at Tesla. But I started joining masterminds, and then and that's the first thing which I did, just invest in myself through books, through podcasts, which are free, available resources. And then I jumped into real estate, where it's like real estate masterminds. So I started networking with a lot of people who've done deals like 5, 10, like even if they're one step ahead, just reaching out to them and having conversations like we had. Kind of like, hey, what are you doing? Like, are there any resources? Can you tell me what this is, or how did you close on your deal? Stuff like that. And they're very approachable to kind of like help you because they've done that, and they would be so much more willing to do that. And in turn, I'm like, hey, if there are any resources you need from me, I have this background, I can help you as well. That's when kind of like my networking started, and I started getting more motivated of like, yeah, I can do this more and more. So what started off as a journey of like, I want to just replace my income, kind of like, yeah, I want to move towards being a real estate investor or a full-time entrepreneur. That's when I purchased my first deal completely out of state in Missouri. And just through networking again, I got networked with someone who knew someone over there, and they had like a firm who does rehab or property management. Because another thing on H1B, I cannot do anything active. I cannot run a business on the side. I cannot actively manage any business. So all of these things have to be passive. Someone else has to be doing the work because, again, I cannot be replacing a US citizen's job. So I have to hire a citizen or a green card holder to do that. And I purchased a 5-unit Burr project, which was a duplex and a triplex. And this was 2021 in January. I purchased it, and then kind of like we ran through all the numbers and then how much the value add is going to be. And then 3 months later, completed the project, finished up, and then that made me the same amount of, I'd built up equity, and that was the same amount of money which Tesla was paying me for a year. And that's when it hit me. I'm like, I want to do this more of kind of doing this. And just not just replace my income, but completely move towards entrepreneurship. But again, this problem is that on H1B, I cannot do that. So there are 3 ways which I can essentially, from a perspective of H1B to becoming a citizen. The first one is when I get my H1B, now for the company to keep me for the very long term, as in completely to getting a green card, they have to file something which is called a I-140 form. That essentially means my job posting or my job is going to be on their job board posting for 6 months. And that's a process where they want to see if any American can replace or do the job which I am doing at Tesla. So everywhere, like on their LinkedIn, on their websites, they'll post my job posting everywhere. So that essentially proves that, hey, I'm not truly replacing someone, but we cannot find anyone else in the country who can do this job. So that's how my I-140 will get approved, and that's would be the reasoning that, hey, this person can do the job, and we have to bring him over and give him a green card. So that's the process of getting a green card. But since India and China have the highest backlog, it will take us close to 30 plus years to get a green card. So I didn't want that. I'm like, I don't want to work for Tesla or any company for the next 30 years. So that's the first option if you want to do that. The second option is marrying a citizen, which I feel went against my morals and ethics. I'm like, I would never do that. And the third one is investing $1 million in the US in a project. For example, you see this big ski resorts or like big hotels coming in. So you can invest $1 million in those projects. It fast tracks your green card, but it still takes close to 7 years to get that. So I'm like, I would choose option three because I'm like, hey, it'll be a cool story to build out, kind of like, hey, let's make $1 million in the next 2 to 3 years. That's when I started aggressively kind of learning more about like other tools in my pocket of like, hey, creative financing, how to structure deals, how to like use OPM, like other people's money, kind of doing anything and anything possible, or seller carrybacks or seller financing just to grow my portfolio so that I have $1 million and then I can just sell everything and pay the government and get my green card much faster so I can become an entrepreneur much faster.
So this
And
is
yes.
this is unreal. So first of all, when you told me, and this is how naive I am, when you told me that it was $1 million that you'd have to have invested to get your green card, I mean, I had no idea. So my thought process is, although I truly believe America is the best country, like I love America, I love the opportunity. Part of me is like, wow, I can't believe the cost and what somebody has to go through to become a citizen, and then you have to pay that, and essentially once you get there, then you're kind of starting over. The good news is that you know all the schools, the skills and the tools and everything that is necessary to build it back, but you're taking that equity and then you move it into a project, or you basically pay for your green card, and then now you have to start over. So is that what you did?
So it took me 3 years. So starting from 2020 to 2023, took me 3 years to scale to 55 units. And I own half of it, and half of it is owned by partnerships through other people. Uh, but then 3 years later, I had that $1 million. So I built a $6 million portfolio, which I had like somewhere around like 1.3 to $1.5 million in equity. And then I was like, I'm all happy. And I'm like, okay, cool. I am ready to do this. And now I'm going to be investing in my visa. But 2023, I finally came back home after 5 years, because whenever your visa is in process, you cannot leave the country. So anything happens, which a lot of things happen, I cannot go back to my home. So 5 years later, I finally returned back home. And then 2 weeks later, unfortunately, my mom passed away. And that was such a huge hit, and a wake up call of like, hey, who am I truly building this for, and what am I building for? Because my biggest goal in life was to just bring my family out of poverty, right? Not to kind of like be this real estate investor or kind of like do all of that. My biggest thing was, so a lot of my priorities changed at that point. And then I started realizing that, hey, I do not want to renew my H1B going forward, nor do I want to kind of like buy into the green card. I'll still scale, I'll still buy, I'll still like, because I have the systems, I have people in the US now who will help me do that. So even though I was building in Missouri from Reno, I'm like, okay, now I'm just going to be another 8,000 miles away. Like, it's the same process. Everything is the same, just a little more barriers where now I have to qualify for a non-residential loan, which might have a higher interest or lower LTV. But that's fine. That's cost of doing business for me. But I'm like, I'll still try to find a way to build wealth. And that's when I took that step of, hey, I can come back, give this amazing experience to my dad, bring them out of poverty, doing all of that. So 2024 end, I decided that I'm going to return back to India. Came back to India. It's been a year. I've been back. Has been one of the most, I think, fruitful and extreme, like joyful, like things for me, because I've done a lot of things this year, like celebrated like my friends, like having babies or like their weddings, or like getting my dad on his first flight. Right, that was such an experience. He never flew on a flight. So giving that, moving them from that position of poverty to a very like the biggest like high rise in the same city. So it feels very rewarding that I'm able to do that for them now. But then my thing was, I'm still scaling, I'm still doing that. But then I realized 6 months into me being India that so many more immigrants are stuck in this loop, and not everyone either has the knowledge or kind of like doesn't even know like, hey, this thing exists to kind of like invest, build wealth, because we come from such a place of scarcity that we tiptoe our way of like, oh no, this is good, this is bad, this is good, and I don't even want to go further ahead. Like I'm just in survival mode. So that's when I started creating my own mastermind, to help more immigrants kind of invest in real estate, become financially free, and just give them the power of choice and nothing else. Not to become wealthy, but just having that choice of, hey, if it's too hard for you, if your assets are working for you, you can always quit, come back, you can buy your green card. If whatever, that choice is up to you instead of your boss's hand, because that's what I felt, that I cannot stand up to my boss because what if he fires me, right? And then I'm all again in that 60-day period, which is like a very bad thing, because I cannot even claim unemployment. Though I pay into social security, I'll pay into everything, I cannot claim that because I'm on a visa. I can only access that when I get my green card at the age of 60 or 61. So just all of those things like pushed me out the back, but I'm okay now finding out, hey, I can help more people. So that's essentially what I'm doing now.
Hey, let me pause the episode real quick. Let me know if this sounds like you. You're making six figures, you're climbing the corporate ladder, investing in your 401k and your Roth IRA, and maybe even a brokerage account. But deep down, you're asking yourself, is this really it? Like, am I just going to do this thing for the next 30 years and hope to retire in my 60s? That was exactly us just a few years back. We were curious and excited about real estate, but overwhelmed and without a roadmap. If you fast forward to today, we've built a portfolio of over 80 cash flowing units and grown our net worth to over $2 million. We made it our mission to help busy professionals like you take that same leap and start building generational wealth for yourself and your family. That's exactly why we created the Wealth Juice Inner Circle, a private real estate investing community designed to help you get your first rental property under your belt in as little as 90 days. Inside, you'll get direct access to us, our full investing network, private off-market deals, and our exact playbook, and a community of investors who are closing deals every single week. That first property changed everything for us. We always talk about it. It was the true foundation for building generational wealth. And honestly, if we had access to something like this when we first started, we'd be 10 times further along by now. So if this sounds just like you, click the link in our show notes and schedule a call with me. Yes, me. I'll be taking the calls. We'll go over your goals, map out a plan, and get you ready to close your first deal. Let's get it. Yeah, I think a lot of people are afraid to not only invest in themselves, right, or invest into a property for the future, but I've heard a lot of people nervous to invest out of state. Now you're already doing that from like the jump, not from your first property, but like the second or third. You invested from Reno to Missouri, and now you're living proof that you can not only do it from a few states away in the United States, but you can do it from multiple across the world, right? So I think that you for whatever reason, I just was really drawn to your story and the way that you approach things, and it gives me motivation because like the way that I grew up, I came from a better financial situation than you. And I always look at myself in the mirror. I'm like, well, what is my excuse if I'm not able to do something? If Gaurav can do it and he can do it amidst having this against all odds mentality of potentially having to get fired or not get a green card. And then I'm so sorry to hear about your mother passing away. Like all these things that happen. It's just for me, if I'm listening, if I'm driving, I'm thinking about the motivation that comes from, well, if you can do this, I certainly can. I came from a better off position. So now you're focused on helping other people do this. And I'm curious on, your approach with that. Like what are you focused on to help other people try to follow in the footsteps that you created?
Yes. So My bigger, I think, bigger vision for this academy is that obviously, like, immigrants face not just the challenge of financials, but so many things. Because when I landed in the US, I had no clue how the system works. The problem with that is that a lot of people don't have the choice and they don't even know how the system works. And when I landed, I was probably like 2021, and I just landed in the US, and I'm like, I don't know anyone. I don't know how the system works. I have no connections. Now I have to build, right? I just have to go out and figure this out. So I want to eventually create a platform for financial literacy, and then also boosting confidence for immigrants, because we tend to not speak up. Because again, like the examples I'm giving you, kind of, we always have that fear of, maybe if I speak up, I can lose my job. If I go against this, there are so many of those things. I want to help those people do that, but also as a base, set up their financials of like, hey, I'll help you kind of understand what a Roth IRA is, or 401k. How do the 401ks work? Or like how to start budgeting, how to start investing. And then once they are at that level, invest in real estate, like how to invest in real estate. How did I do that with all the legal ways of like how to do it, like how to do it passively and safely, so that they can start investing maybe their just primary home or their first rental property, as long as it gives them some kind of confidence that they have power in themselves to change their well-being and situation, like whatever the situation be. And that's what I want to like empower more and more immigrants who are kind of like stuck in that limbo or feel stuck. So
Yeah. I have, so Ryan and I have a mentorship program. We teach people how to buy their first or next rental property. And I've had a couple interactions with people that are, from Jersey and Philadelphia like us, but also people that are from all over the place and then come from varying different backgrounds. And I have noticed, and I understand it, like kind of what you're saying, that some first generation parents are instilling upon their kids, like, just play it safe, like, just follow the rules. And I get it, because if you're in a new place and you don't really that there's the powers that be that are running the United States, right? So I get that scarcity, but I just love that you're helping people remove themselves from that mindset, because you can kind of, if you can do it, I think so many more people should be empowered to realize that this is so possible. And like I know I'm double clicking on that a lot, but we in our previous conversation we mentioned a mutual friend of ours, Diego Corzo, right? Who is a DACA recipient, and I know he's in Austin. I don't know if he's in Austin or Puerto Rico now. I know he's been
even
kind of
awesome.
going back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's like, he's somebody who's built a portfolio in a similar situation to you and has inspired others. And I just love these stories. It really, like I said, it kind of helps me continue to push onward and do my best. So, in terms of your portfolio, do you continue to buy in Missouri? Is that your place? Are you expanding to other markets? Like, what does that look like, and what is the strategy there?
Sure. So I have sold a couple of real estate this year and last year, just to give me stability in India. Kind of like with that huge like returning back, there are obviously costs related to it. So I sold a few, and I'm just like stabilizing that. But then with the portfolio which I have, I obviously want to sell that 1031 exchange into bigger portfolios. So now I want to play in the 50 to 100 unit apartment units, or potentially get into the boutique hotel industry. That's where I'm kind of proceeding into. But anytime, like any small deals or things like that, for example, hey, this could be a subject to deal, or this could be a seller finance. I am more than willing to kind of like just take those on, just to kind of like build a small portfolio out of that, so that it gives me the option of, again, 1031 into much bigger projects.
Yeah, I have a few people that I'd like to introduce you to on the hotel front. I think I've mentioned Rich Summers on this when we first chatted. He runs a hotel mastermind. Gideon Spencer, who's been on our podcast as well, he runs a hotel mastermind. I think the boutique hotel space is great, and that could help you kind of further get into that world. And it's amazing what happens when you get into real estate and you start buying single family rentals and you buy duplexes and triplexes, and you realize that is, to me, that's the best way to start. Like, house
Yeah.
hacking is still the best way to start, but some people go right to the larger projects, and I think it's very possible. I'm not knocking that, but I think that when you learn how to be a landlord on training wheels and how to self-manage, and then how to move that to a property manager and then create systems. And then you look at, you have 6 to 8 units. And then that, to me, that's the best way to grow, because you understand the fundamentals. Excuse me. You understand the fundamentals of how it works, and then get into larger projects, I think is great. Have you decided on a market or anything like that, or kind of just waiting to see how it plays out?
Yeah, I think I'm deciding, but my goal strategy would still be value add. And I see a lot of the Midwestern market like that. I don't want to just invest for appreciation. I want cash flow or some kind of equity which I can roll over right now. So that's kind of like my strategy would be going, but also my also strategy is going to be that whatever income which I make from the mastermind, I invest in deals within my community or bring in deals from other like operators, because I feel I'm still a visionary founder in that space, because I had to do everything passively. So all of those can be handled as system by someone or an operator. But I am more, I think like I excel at like networking or collecting resources or knowing more people. And I think that's where my skill set lies. So whatever I can kind of get into an asset class, I think that's going to be the future of it. But I really want to invest more and more money inside of the group. And that's why I also started like an AI company to build like ancillary companies around it to help them. For example, I'm building like an AI agent like caller right now, which just cold calls you, because obviously they cannot cold call. So you can hire a service to cold call for you instead, because that's a passive thing which is managed by a different company in the US. So just trying to find creative ways of how I can serve the community better and try to keep everything legal, like from as a legality point, so that they're not jeopardizing their visa or something like that. So that's my major focus. And I know like eventually deals will come around in that or from some places in these masterminds or networking.
So basically, what you're saying here is that because these individuals are on visas or trying to get their green card, you just mentioned this, they can't actually make the cold calls themselves because that would be actively working in the business, but
Correct.
they can hire a company to make the cold calls for them.
Correct.
Can you tell me about this AI agent? I've heard this on Instagram, by the way. I've seen some posts about, an AI agent and doing like the recorded calls, and like I think they're starting to get extremely good. Have you found success in having AI agents call, and like has it gotten to the point where it's unrecognizable? I guess is my question, or not really.
I think it's 80% there, 80 to 90%. I think sometimes where and I think that requires a lot of tweaking to the more data you have, like training set, the more better it's going to be. But I think somewhere it deviates right now is that if you kind of give them an arbitrary thing, kind of like a unicorn thing which doesn't exist, right? Hey, I have a unicorn in my living room. It won't be able to recognize that and kind of respond. But then again, you can give it prompts and like train the knowledge base to improve that. But as like a call, if I would not tell you, it's very hard to distinguish it's AI or not. So that's
One of the
something which
things that I noticed, Gaurav, is that the only thing that the tell is the distance in the time from when I finish talking to when they start talking. I feel like I can tell because it's almost like they're processing the information. But I've started to see some of these calls that are like, they're pretty good. They're like they start to really get it. I just, it's funny because like I feel like if I was being cold called and I wasn't, it's already annoying enough to get a cold call from somebody. But then if
Mhm.
it wasn't a human and I
Mhm.
picked up on that, I would probably just be pissed off. But I guess you can train these AI agents to sound just like you or to have the exact same cadence, right? Is that kind of what you're doing?
Yes, exactly. So I can train it on my voice. I can train it on an American voice. I can train it on any kind of voice. And then it speaks exactly the same way like a human would. And I know it's like very weird to talk about it, but I feel like that's where the opportunity also lies to 10x your productivity right now. Because I might miss out on a lot of leads, or someone who has a service business. Like if they do not have a receptionist at like 12 a.m., like midnight or like 1 a.m., any I can like pick up the phone and take down all the information, which might be a missed lead. So that's what I'm trying to solve for real estate in general, right now. I've already built out an MVP. So today we are almost good to go. So I am going to be training the model starting today. So we're going to be doing a lot of testing work. And I can probably give you a demo later on
I would love
about
to
it.
see a demo. It's not, and I think for people that are listening that are like, oh man, I don't want to be doing the cold calls, but I understand the game. It's a lower leverage task that I could outsource. But just tell me about how you create the agent. Can anyone do this? Is it part of Chat GPT, or is it a different, like, how do you actually go about creating one?
So there are two things. So the first one is obviously kind of putting a wrapper, which I would not recommend. Like there are people who would just build on top of ChatGPT or something like a call agent, and that is your thing. The other thing is more about vibe coding, and then kind of like vibe coding essentially means that, hey, I have a thought in mind and I just want to create a CRM or an app which does that for me. But once you have an ideation form of like, hey, this will work, now you actually hire like an AI developer to do the front end back end so that it is to the enterprise level. But then majority people don't need the enterprise level. Some people might just need like workflows and automation right now. So there are like really good websites like N8N or Make where you can just build automation, and you can like literally watch a YouTube video for 2 hours and then be very proficient in just making those automations or workflows. So it's more acts like if X do Y, and then if Y do Z, or like you can translate that as a if else statement. That's more of the workflow and automation. But this thing is more, I'm trying to build it as an enterprise level solution for real estate investors who are maybe just don't want to cold call because they're not excellent at negotiating or doing all of that. And then that can transform into something much bigger. But I'm just having fun with it because now I can truly be an entrepreneur. So I am more happy that I get the opportunity to build these things, and I can pivot in anything or do anything what I want or what I want to build.
No, it's amazing, man. To hear like the perspective that you have when you are totally in this position now where it's like the bad things that happen to you are like, oh, I get to experience that. Because when you come from a position where you don't know if you're going to be able to stay in a place, or you have to move across the world, I just think the gratitude like kind of just shines through, and you're like, oh, I am so thankful that I get to go do this, right? And I think a lot of people kind of build this world around them that they grow to dislike, and then they kind of forget why they did it in the first place, and just to have the gratitude. And I'm putting up a post on Instagram this week about how there's people on the internet and entrepreneurs telling you that you're not successful and you will be happy and you'll be successful when you get to this level, or the reason that you're not successful is because you haven't achieved this thing. And every single time I take a step back and think, man, if I'm happy right now, I will be happy or happier when I achieve my goal. If I'm miserable right now, I might be as miserable or more miserable when I go and hit that goal and I go and achieve that thing, because it's not actually the thing, but it's the
Yeah.
mindset behind, I already feel appreciative about who I am and what I've done thus far. And that's how I kind of want to wrap this up. I'm very curious on your why. Like, what's the thing that kept you going in all of this? I mean, you mentioned your family, and you're doing exactly what you set out to do in the first place. You could have said, oh, I'm going to go chase the money. But you said,
Mhm.
no, the reason I did this is because I wanted to take care of my family. And I'm sure they're like so appreciative of that. I'm curious on what gets you out of bed every morning. What kept you going in the hard times? Like, what's the why behind what you do?
So I think I've had my biggest why when I was building this, like coming to the US, educating, all of like getting myself educated, all of that was more so coming from the why of I need to get my family out of poverty. And since I have like now I have this opportunity, I'm going to utilize it to my best ability to do that, like to bring them out of that state so that we are comfortable and we have a really good life in India. After my mom's passing, again, a lot of things changed. I started to see the world a different way. But obviously, I've always had this thing of kind of uplifting other people or who are stuck in any kind of way or like shape or form. And this could be in any field, whether it's mindset, whether it's like other resources, whether it's real estate, whether it's anything they need help. I would be more than happy to just uplift them. And I think that's my biggest why, because I feel somewhere down the line, even for example, like my first boss maybe who gave me a job, right? Whether it would be the janitorial job, whether it would be the guy who gave me the job at Tesla, whether anyone, the opportunity of the mentor who gave me that opportunity of doing, like, hey, this is the thing. I want to be that source for more people. I'm like, hey, I'll help you, like, more and more people to uplift you so that you can live a much comfortable life, what you desire. And that's kind of like keeps me going of helping more and more people, which is an exciting thing to do, because I feel like money is just a tool to achieve things. And the more money, it's like, is it truly needed, or are you just doing it? But now that mindset has changed. It's like, now I'm just building fun things just for the fun of it. Kind of like, yeah, I can do this, I can do that, now I can do this, let's try this. Because I've always been a curious person to do that, and I was very restricted on my visa to go out and do that, because I can only work on the study, the education which I've got. So if I've done electrical engineering, I can only take up jobs. I cannot go drive an Uber. I cannot do any other else. I have to have a job which is related to like engineering, and then I have to grow my career path for the next 30 days, like 30 years in that field.
Got it.
So
Yeah. I've always wondered if, because I love helping people too. I really do. I really enjoy. I like truly watching the light behind somebody's eyes click when they realize that this thing can work and I didn't know about it before, right? But I always wonder if that's ego for me too. Like, do I enjoy helping other people because I like it, how it makes me feel like I was an impact?
uh,
I think that, honestly, I think accepting that for myself is okay, because I've known that, like, hey man, if I could be a sliver of somebody's pie and help them in some way, that the way that they now know me is, oh man, Corey was really willing to go out of his way for me. Like, that's really cool. So maybe it is an ego thing, but I relate it back to when I coached basketball. Like, I was coaching high level Division 1 athletes and a few guys who played in the NBA. And I always thought, man, if they could just remember that I was here during this one time frame. Like, I vividly remember sitting in a hotel room. I don't think I've ever told the story, after a loss in a game with one of our players who now plays at Bucknell and another player who plays in the Dallas Mavericks. And I remember just them talking about what was going on in their lives. And I remember thinking, like, man, in a few years, you guys are not going to remember this, but you're going to hopefully take some nuggets of information that I give you on why did we lose today? How can we get better? And we ended up winning the state championship that year. I went off on a little bit of a tangent. I guess my point is that, like, realizing that helping people, I think it's okay if you say that if you're doing it for yourself too. But I just like the feeling of knowing that, like, when I walk into a room, people will be like, this person is willing to go out of their way for me, and I think that you have that naturally, like that you have that, like, I've seen this in my life and I'm able to give you now some tools that you can do this too. And true, you're living proof, that, man, that, like, a couple of relationships can change your life. Like, truly,
correct.
a couple of relationships. You just have to lean into that and not lean away from it. I think a lot of people lean away as, like, I'm a lone wolf. I need this lone wolf mentality, and I don't think it's true at all. So I just said a lot of words there, but I'm curious if you have anything to add on that.
Yeah, I think, man, I'll tell you, I have always remembered people who've given me a helping hand to, like, get me to that next level. Like, I was talking, like, the first job, or someone who, for example, even Diego, right? He has been such an inspiration for me, because when I came into the space of real estate, I did not know a lot of people, because I always thought that you have to be a citizen. But since he was on DACA, and since he was an immigrant himself, him being my mentor significantly motivated me to take those next steps, that, hey, I can do this as well. And I love Diego. Like, I would say, like, he's an amazing, awesome, like, human being. But now I get to do that for other people. I always remember Diego. Like, I always reach out. I, like, now he's become a really good friend of mine. But I also remember all the people who've helped me in that space of getting my first deal, or getting my first job, or getting anything of that sort. So I always remember people who helped me along the way. And that brings me joy, because when my mentees now kind of do that, yes, it's an ego boost or whatever, but I think there is also this component of a sigh of, this works, and I finally help that person get to that next level. which is such a good thing in their perspective, right? And then I also get the joy of feeling that they send me pictures, there's like, signing or whatever, or like these are the numbers, and I get excited because they are improving their life, and now eventually they'll be able to live the life of choice, which I am living now, and I feel like so content, and I'm like, I'm not anxious anymore that, hey, I'm going to lose my job, or like some policy changes or something happens with my visa and I have to quit. So them being on that path also significantly fulfills me, while like vicariously I feel like living through them, of like, hey, they are doing the path which I was doing 5 years ago, and I'm so excited for you to do that.
One of the things about mentorship and building wealth that I've learned that I wanted to mention here, because you're from India, I'm from Philadelphia. We didn't know each other a month ago, but you grew up in a way that you still had the same goals in a similar way to me on your mind halfway across the world, right? What I've realized is about this community of wealth building and what it teaches you is that it kind of teaches you that we're all in this for the same things, to try to help each other and our families out. And I think the more that people remove the thought process that like wealthy people or rich people are evil, like that thing that holds people back and it keeps you in this like baseline, like protective level, the more that you feed into like a lot of people out there are just trying to do what's best for them and their family and the people around them and their community. And it's like, I've met people from India, from Mexico, from from Africa. Like we've had people on our podcast from all over the world, from all different walks of life, and there's a common theme, and it's they want to help and they want to better the situations of their family and other people's families. That is Philadelphia, that's New York, that's San Francisco, that's India, that's everywhere. So like that, to me, there's like a huge lesson in that. And if you pick up your phone, you think everyone hates each other right now. And
Yeah.
I always say this when I'm on the podcast is like, if you put that, I know we're doing this virtually, so it's like it's still a version of the internet, but like when you put down your phone and you go out into real life and you see real people and you have real conversations, a lot of it isn't true. And that is, to me, that is like the best feeling ever. It's like if you just put down your phone and you have a real conversation with a real person, doesn't matter where they're from. There's assholes everywhere from
Yeah.
all over the place. But the more that you feed into like just being a servant and giving, I just think you find that life is a lot more happy and you feel a lot more confident. You feel a lot better about what you're doing, and as opposed to like, oh, this is all crumbling. That's my take.
Exactly. And I'll tell you like the story of an immigrant in terms of my journey. It's like, if I have had incidents of like racism, like
Of
against
course,
me.
I'm sure you
Yes,
have. Yes, yeah,
sure. But if I only had met people like that, I would generalize, which a lot of people do, right? If I've only had bad experiences, or if that was the only certain experience I had, I would never have like friends or community I would network with. But now, like, I have some American friends who are just amazing. Like, I could never, like, even America is like the land of opportunity. And I still believe that is the land of opportunity. If you work hard, you can achieve anything you want, right? And then people generally, like 95% of the people are generally amazing and awesome. And they're just like normal human beings who want to just earn and provide for family. That's all we are all doing. And just finding different ways to do that.
yep. I love the conversation, man. I really appreciate your time. I think this is. I'm excited to see where our relationship goes. I'm excited to see if I can help you bring more people into your community, because I think that what you're doing is awesome and it's inspirational. So I want to thank you for your time. This has been amazing to get to know you. If people want to learn more about you, they want to learn about your program, they want to learn about like just to network with you to see if it's a good fit to collaborate. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Sure. So the best way is obviously my IG. It's your investor mate. So like your friend, like your investor mate. And then my website, it's h1binvestoracademy.com.
Love it, Gaurav. I really appreciate it, man. Thanks so much for taking the time today.
Yes. Thank you so much, Corey. I really appreciate this as well.
Before we wrap this show up, I want to leave you with this. If you're listening to the show, chances are you're doing pretty well in your career. You're making maybe six figures. You're putting money into your retirement accounts, maybe stacking some cash in a brokerage account, but you're still waiting for that next level. And here's the truth. Waiting just costs you time. Every month you're on the sidelines is another month you could have had a property paying you and another step closer to financial freedom that you didn't take. Ryan and I know this because we stayed on the sidelines too long. We talk about this sometimes. We had the money, but not the guidance. And once we finally got our first property, everything shifted. It was the catalyst that built our entire portfolio and ultimately gave us freedom. And that's exactly why we built the Wealth Juice Inner Circle, to cut out wasted time, just give you the exact blueprint and surround you with a network of people who are closing deals every single week. So if you're tired of waiting and you're ready to finally get your first deal, click the link in the show notes and schedule a call with me. Let's map out your strategy and get you moving before another year slips by.